Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Vittorio Puente coming to you from sunny South Texas and Mid-Valley Behavioral Health and Psychological Services. And today I'm going to discuss part 2 of the 3-part series on understanding racism and discrimination. Today I'm going to discuss stereotypes, but before I get into stereotypes, let me conclude the discussion on ethnocentrism. And I want to emphasize that ethnocentrism is probably a natural condition now. We generally have an idea of our ethnic group, and we want to establish our bonds within that ethnic group. So it's rather a natural condition than a learned condition. And it's developed through a number of processes. And these processes include in-group loyalty, ethnocentric hostility, rigidity, self-esteem, and the extent or frequency of contact with out-group members. Now, the acceptance of differences requires flexibility in the interaction with others, while being mindful of the inflexibility in our thinking. So the way we think of ourselves in a group of community has much to do with our level of flexibility and inflexibility. So if we tend to be more inflexible, if our self-esteem is low, and we do not have a lot of contact with people from outgroups or other ethnic groups, then we're probably going to develop a stronger, more rigid, ethnocentric perspective. So let me move on now to stereotypes. Now, stereotypes refer to generalized images or beliefs that we have about groups of people, particularly about their underlying psychological characteristics and personality traits. And it's performed without giving any sufficient attention to individual differences among group members. So whenever you hear a statement that seems to be all-inclusive, such as Mexicans are, or African Americans are, or people from small towns are, then the content is stereotypical because the claim does not take into account the individual differences among, say, those Mexicans that the person is referring to, or groups of people from small towns. It is a belief about any group of people. Groups of people including Republicans, Muslim, Christian, graduating seniors, career women, or people who drive BMW 300 series. So like ethnocentrism, stereotypes are normal. They're normal cognitive processes that we use to deal with our world in a more efficient way. These processes reflect our need to organize, remember, and retrieve information that might be useful as we navigate through the demands of our lives. And to do that in less times, to do it more efficiently and economically. So it allows us to pay attention to other things. Stereotypes, then, have 3 general characteristics. 1. They can be positive or negative. 2, they can be generally true or completely false. And 3, they also apply to the person's own group. Positive stereotypes might include the belief that, for example, Christians are all supportive people. And that belief can facilitate the inclusion of that particular person. So if there's a belief among Christians that say atheists are not supportive of religions, then that particular person who's Christian may not be open to knowing and sharing social times with somebody who identifies as atheist. Now, negative stereotypes. Negative stereotypes are the stereotypes that these discussions are focused on. Negative stereotypes are those beliefs that lead to prejudice, discrimination, and racism. Stereotypes that are well learned are activated automatically when faced with a person from another group. So, they would automatically activate if you're faced with somebody who appears to be a cowboy, who appears to be a sailor, a pirate. So, if you encounter somebody where there's not a lot of information and simply by their accent, a stereotype may likely be activated. For example, if I came up to you and started speaking to you like, you know, man, I never liked that guy. That guy, I never trusted him. In fact, he probably had me set up and Vicente Fernandez killed. Or you might, if you see me and you hear me speak with an accent such as, now those people from Rock Ridge are gonna run like nobody has ever chased them ever again in their past. The first example, without any other information besides what you heard, you might assume that I am Tony Montana from Scarface. And the second one, I might be one of the cowboys in Blazing Saddles. So the accent allows a stereotype to activate. You might have had that if you've been exposed to any of those two movies. That activation brings up a memory and how you're going to respond to it. A belief system that is taught by a socializing agent to be more attentive to individual differences when faced with automatic activation of a negative stereotype or positive stereotype will help promote less prejudicial thinking and action. And socializing agents are you and I and anyone who lives within the community that promotes, propagates, or passes on values and information about the community itself and others from other communities or ethnic groups. So we inadvertently become socializing agents. I, as a psychologist, potentially become a socializing agent. You, as a teacher, an insurance agent, a parent, a pastor, has the capacity to socialize our young to be more attentive to individual differences when they're faced with the activation of those negative or positive stereotypes. And that's going to promote less prejudicial thinking and action. So the goal then is to move from automatic processing, the quick judgments, to a more controlled processing of those stereotypes. Now, Adler is a theorist, a researcher who offered a checklist, and I thought it was really good. It's very interesting. I think it's fabulous that this checklist for concepts that we should keep in mind whenever we decide based upon a stereotype. So the first thing, stereotypes should be consciously held and not simply reaction. So people should be conscious that there are exceptions to stereotypes and should actively look for these exceptions. Process these exceptions with your late childhood age son or daughter and look for different ways of thinking. Stereotypes should be descriptive. So generalizations about people should describe behavior and should contain no evaluative commentary about the behavior. Look for complexity to move away from oversimplified thinking that is so common in the use of stereotypes. Making statements around your children, such as, some people drive BMWs, don't use their turning signal as often, is preferable than saying, that guy over there in a BMW, people who drive BMWs are all self-indulgent narcissists. which, because it's a stereotype, is not entirely true. 3. Stereotypes should be accurate. So whenever possible, like I said before, they can be accurate, they can have truth, or they can be completely false. So whenever possible, people should search carefully to determine whether the generalizations they make are supported by various pieces of evidence. So given that intercultural interactions are limited, in particular in places outside large cities, then other forms of evidence is needed. And with the height of technology and the internet, we do have the potential to access different types of productions, plays, music, interviews, documentaries about different countries, from different countries and cultures, that give us a more broad experience of who we might be talking or thinking about. So we're not available, though. If you're not able to access much information, then take care in how you refer to folks from other cultures or groups. And the type of care that I suggest is qualifying your remarks when you're around your children. I know that's going to ask you to think a little more and to not be as reactive. But your reactions will go a long way. And remarks such as far as I know, Irish Americans prefer cooler weather than hotter tropical weather, but I could be wrong. That type of qualification of what you say suggests that there is possibility for other pieces of information, that your knowledge about this particular group is limited. Number 4, stereotypes should be a first best guess, not the actual all-inclusive information about that group. So with any stereotype, when making a judgment, you should consider it a first best guess, suggesting that other guesses will be made when further evidence is available, and you can move beyond the first guess. The stereotypes do apply to all groups. And looking for other information to help support or contradict your first best guess is important. And stereotypes, with that in mind, should be modifiable. And that's number 5. So if you're willing to go beyond the first guess, then you're willing to modify your generalizations in the event that more information is available. So by growing in age or increasing your intercultural interactions, you have opportunities to modify those generalizations with more complexity in your observations and your perceptions. And the complexity will go a long way to addressing prejudice, discrimination, and racism. Well, that concludes this portion of the information on understanding racism and discrimination and prejudice. So stay tuned next week for part 3, where I continue and talk specifically about racism, discrimination, and prejudice. And so until then, thank you very much for your time and taking a moment to learn a little more about something that I believe is extremely important to our kids and to our communities. So until next time, take care of yourself and see you then.